Welcome back, travelers, to Legendary Lore, where today we will be giving another jump scare to... what was it? Cosmic Errata? Cosmic Errata. Thank you for watching, by the way. You watch every episode, and we greatly appreciate it.
Even if you skip the beginning where Ricky screams, it's okay.
Yeah.
I do, too. I wasn't tuned in during that.
You just, like, out of body. Okay, we're in. Okay.
That's how you do it. That's how you watch the beginning of Legendary Lore.
Basically, today's episode continues the main storyline of Dominaria United. It opens up with Karn on the deck of the Weatherlight, which is a really cool moment because Karn was...
Do you have an image for that?
Sadly, no.
Ah.
Well, I mean, you could technically use the...
Because we have some in the past.
Like, I mean, yeah, but also just the general idea of, like, you could have just Karn and the way he looks, like, with the golden and brown design they have for his card right now, the newest one. It kind of looks like you technically could try to say that he's on the ship. He's not. He's definitely at the Caves of Corlos with all his robots, but that's beside the point. So, basically, he's there, and he's, like, filled with nostalgia as he looks around at all the people and all the rigging, and he's looking at all the different stuff they have, and it's pretty cool. Now, that said, they are essentially trying to get away from everything going on, and the main way the Weatherlight is actually able to camouflage itself is that it makes itself look like it's already been completed. So there's like all these bits of Phyrexian like gunk and stuff all over the ship. And it's like draped over it, and like the wings look like they have like little bits of like bat wing stuff on it. So they specifically made the Weatherlight look completed so that it could just fly through Phyrexian territories, since the Phyrexians are already trying to take everything over.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's smart.
And so basically you have Jodah, you have Jaya, you have Shana now, you have Raph, you have all the characters from the Weatherlight that we saw in Dominaria.
Weatherlight. That's cool.
The current Weatherlight crew, they're all there. And they basically come to a decision where, well, I'll just say what they say. It says here that they're going to split up. Jaya says that she's going to go to, she's going to go with everybody else to Benalia to try and get Denitha to join forces with them. At the same time, and thanks to that, they'll also be able to get Radha because the Keldans are worth the Benelish, right?
Okay.
At the same time, Jodah is going to go to Yavimaya, and he's going to try and recruit the elves that are there. At the same time that happens...
Oh, we get an artwork from that, I know.
What?
We get an artwork from that.
Yes, the actual artwork for Jodah.
Oh, that is his main artwork?
Yeah, his main artwork is the one with the purple flowers on him.
Okay.
Where he meets...
Spoiler, that's how that goes. He does well. I mean, a little bit... Do you know what? No, we won't cut that out.
And then...
I'll put up the stained glass one. But...
Yeah. And also Teferi and Karn are going to go to the Mana Rig to see Jaya. Not Jaya, Joyra, sorry. Lots of J names. Jaces. Too many. It hasn't been a Jace in a long time. We haven't seen Jace in forever. So, hopefully he's completed. Anyways, you make him interesting.
Hopefully he's fighting the completed. Nisha got completed. True.
So Karn actually figured out that the best way to tell if somebody has been completed is to use the scryer that he designed during the tower fight. Because if you're looking at a Phyrexian, it becomes clouded. And it's hard for him to actually see them do what they need to do.
So he found a better thing than a candle.
Yeah, exactly. So essentially, like, because the scryer's looking like for the soul kind of thing, and if it's muddled up, then it's not going to work. Because we've noticed, especially looking at some characters like Urte, the soul is no longer automatically discarded when you complete someone. They at least have it while a sleeper agent. They're essentially the same person they were beforehand and have no idea otherwise.
I'm thinking the scar looks at the soul. I'm thinking of Davriel. Karn uses it on Davriel. It just says IOU. Just like, what am I looking at?
He gets it and it's just like, he looks and it's a contract. And it's like, in order to view this, you have to sign this contract. It's like, what?
Are you Phyrexian? Get in line, pal. A lot of people want my soul. I don't think you're Phyrexian, and I also don't think you're good. Yeah, you nailed it.
Yeah. Okay, so basically you have Jaya. She goes to the Red Iron Mountains where you can see Keldans and all this other stuff. And she sees a Johnny.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes, and you may recall that Johnny smiled before to Karn. Well, he smiles here too, and he shows his full teeth when he does.
Didn't we give a reason why he wasn't doing that?
What do you mean?
Watch episode 1.
So Johnny's all happy to see Jaya, and he's like, Jaya, my friend, my buddy, and so he hugs her, and he's like gives her like the full squeeze, and Danitha's there, and Danitha's working with Johnny, and they were going to try and find Aaron, who is her dad. So all of this is happening in this story. I'm just going to kind of give you guys what happens here and just run through that one. This one right here, so that we can kind of finish that up.
Is Aaron Capuchin the same one who's on Aaron the Worthy? Or Aaron the Wary?
Aaron the Wary.
Wasn't there
Norn? Norn?
No.
The red creature?
No, there's a red creature named Aaron. You used him in your deck at one point.
Oh, the very, very old one.
Yeah.
No.
It's not the same guy?
Different character entirely.
Okay.
Yes, that was the Goblin King.
Oh.
That's an entirely different thing.
I was going to say, it didn't say Goblin, but also didn't say creature type. Just said Summon Legend.
Yeah, he was human, but he was essentially the king of the goblins because he couldn't be killed.
Oh.
Aaron the Relentless.
Same thing we kind of...
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so, anyways, this Aaron is Aaron Capuchin. And his whole deal is that essentially he's been captured by Phyrexians and has now been taken to a cave, and they're going to go and try and save him. The problem with that is that Jaya, Danitha, and Ajani all go and see what's going on there. And they find Aaron. And it's crazy cool the way they design his character, because you know how there's that stained glass motif? Mm-hmm. His armor is melting off of his body. Like it's made of oil already.
That's cool.
And so he has a shield that's like fused to his arm and stuff like that. Like that's what they do with the sleepers. Well, anyways, Aaron has been completed by Urte, who's here, and he's taunting them. And
it would be really confusing if we didn't see him appear.
Yeah, and guess what? This was the first time we were supposed to be introduced to Urte.
This is why you should subscribe.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense for Urte to show up here first, because he has such a strong connection with Squee's storyline. It would make more sense for that to be the different whatever. So, at this point, everyone pretty much knows that there are Phyrexians popping up, but everyone kind of also thinks we can protect ourselves. So Benalia, this is happening. They have this big fight. There's all these Phyrexians, and Jaya's burning them. The Keldons help. The Benelish are there. They're all fighting. Everything's going well. Johnny's there in the middle of the fight, right next to Jaya, back to back, and he's protecting her with his axe. And they managed to, essentially to fight off most of the things. Danitha, of course, has to kill her dad because he's got enough sense, essentially, to tell her, you need to kill me. Do your duty. And so she kills him. While he's already been Phyrexianized, he's already turned. He just has part of his soul still attached to it. And Urte's very upset with that. And so Urte's like, smoke bomb! And it's worth noting that...
Is it because he's a Capuchin?
It hasn't been stated why. My theory is that the completion process that is used to turn planeswalkers into Phyrexians maintains the soul. Meaning that it's not like it was before, where they would say your soul will be discarded and your body repurposed. So, essentially, there's a way to de-Phyrexianize somebody.
Okay.
From the way it seems.
So you might have good robot Tamio eventually.
Exactly. I think that's what they're setting up for, is for some of these guys to be able to come back. Now, with that said, obviously, those that come back would probably have excruciating trauma from having been doing all those horrible things. That's a whole other theory and idea there, though. What's important is that there's evidence of the soul being still part of the Phyrexians, because when Squee died, he was sent to the afterlife.
Oh, wow, his story was really important.
Yes, it was, and that's the main conceit of why I think that it's like that was relevant.
Why they stole your idea? Oh.
Yeah. So essentially, you have Jaya, you have a Johnny. They're fighting Phyrexians, and they win. Urte runs away. Johnny's happy. Jaya's happy. Danitha's sad because obviously she just killed her dad.
Oof.
Yes. But she obviously agrees to join in the fight against them. The new coalition is its first members. Now, obviously, Urte was, like, he did run away. Yeah, they won. A major part of the reason they won, though, was because of the surprise reveal of a character named Astor. Astor was from the old invasion story and, like, prophecy and stuff like that. From back then, because basically in those stories, the Keldons had this belief that there was going to be an apocalypse, And it was like the whole Twilight idea is what they call it. It was the Twilight. And it was going to show up, and everybody was going to die in glorious battle. And all the dead were going to rise out of the Keldan necropolis, and they were going to be warriors, and they were going to fight for Keld, and it was going to be this massive bloodbath. And it was going to be great from their perspective. Now, despite that, it was at the same time when, because of the way the Phyrexians work, they basically raised all the dead out of the necropolis. And it was, it actually technically happened. At the same time, there's supposed to be this special thing called the Golden Argosy, a fantastical, mythical vehicle of sorts, a giant golden boat that would take everybody and whisk them away to battle. And in the story, a character
It's like a Cal-Team thing.
It does, doesn't it? And I mean, the Keldans are like a war race, so that's part of the reason.
So they're also kind of throwback to Nordic stuff.
They have that vibe. And so essentially what happens is that there's a guy named Astor. He is in the Golden Argosy. He works, he's running it. He gets Eladamri and Lyn Civi over. Yeah, like there's a whole deal. There's a whole lot of stuff in the past. But what's important is that the Golden Argosy just shows up and helps them. It just drops a bunch of Keldans down onto this whole event. And that's part of the reason why Urte had to run away. And what's cool is that Astor's there. Astor's there with Radha, and he's like, "Hey, I'm alive. How you doing?"
It's real.
Yeah, and this was hundreds and hundreds of years ago, but it's because of the fact that the Argosy is essentially like a golden, like time capsule kind of thing that just keeps whatever's inside of it alive.
It doesn't really age.
In stasis, yeah. So this guy just kind of showed up, and that was really cool. The second story, we move on to Maria and Jodah. Maria is the leader of the Yavamayans. Yavamaya, as we know, they're elves, but they also have this, they're kind of teamer leaning. There's a bluish and reddish bit at the same time to their color combinations. We have stuff like the Yavamaya Coast, and of course Maria, who believes that artifacts are going to be very useful in the fight against the Phyrexians. That's her whole deal, is that she's like this, she's kind of a lore fan. She would love legendary lore episodes because she knows about all the old heroes. She knows all about like the Brothers' War.
I hope you're using her.
She sees Jodah, and she's like, "Oh, Jodah!"
That's why he gets so revered.
Yeah,
it's a hero. Do you see this? Treat this man as if he were your leader. You're our leader. No, I am nothing compared to this.
And that's essentially how she responds. She's like super excited to see him, and he's like, "Great, so you'll help us." And she's like, "No."
No.
Yeah, exactly. She's like, "No."
I'm nothing compared to a hero. Look at you. You can solo the world.
And what's funny is like she's like really happy to see him and everything. And she's like if she could, she'd be like, "Can you sign my Thread Dynamo?" And like, but it doesn't actually matter to her because she's like, "Look, we can protect ourselves. We're gonna be safe and fine, and everything's gonna be great. But we're not gonna fight and put people at risk for others. We have to make sure we stay alive. We've already been basically exiled from Yavamaya because Multani lost his entire mind, and there's a whole deal with that."
You can't say these huge things and be like, "Oh no, that's a whole other thing."
Yeah, essentially, Multani just keeps losing his mind because the world is constantly in upheaval.
Okay, that makes sense.
So stuff just keeps happening.
I remember we went one back. He's always losing his mind, isn't he?
Yes.
Because he went.
He's a literal force of nature.
Okay.
So essentially what happens is that she's like, "We're going to just kind of do our own thing and you'll be fine. Don't worry about it." When a Phyrexian dreadnought shows up. Now, the Phyrexian dreadnoughts were these artifacts that were not supposed to exist on Dominaria.
Oh.
You see, the Phyrexian dreadnoughts were being built on Phyrexia, but they had not been basically transposed yet. Urza was noted as having said essentially that if the dreadnoughts ever made it to Dominaria, they would cause untold destruction that no one would be able to stop. So this giant antique dreadnought essentially comes out of nowhere and starts thrashing everything and ruining everybody's day. Meanwhile, Jodah and Maria, they're trying to basically figure out a way to stop this dreadnought from killing everybody. And it's just wrecking everything. What's cool is that she looks over to the side and she's like, "I see something." And he's like, "What? What do you see?" She goes, "Artifacts." And so she just kind of dives into this junkyard and she starts rummaging through artifacts. There's an old story about this thing, but I can't use that right now. There's an old story about this thing, but that's a whole other deal. And so she's just tossing stuff until she finds this like orb. And so she gets the orb, and she basically like says, okay, we they working with Jodah. She basically gets it chucked at the Phyrexian and activates it. And when it activates, it causes a vacuum. It's essentially like this stasis orb, winter orb.
Did she catch a Phyrexian?
Not so much that as it is she caused all the air in the space around it to leave, which instantly caused all of the organic segments of the dreadnought to begin to boil and fizzle, because it's like it's in space.
Yeah.
And it essentially kills the Phyrexian dreadnought, and Rona crawls out of the dreadnought and runs away.
How did Rona survive?
Because she's insane. Now.
Oh, kind of like how someone else survived.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll see that in a bit.
Yeah, too insane to die. Now, that all happens, and Maria's like, okay, maybe we might need to work together. So they do. She basically says, yeah, okay, we'll do it. We'll team up, and it's going to be great. So Jodah gets that help there. It's also worth knowing that when Maria talks about that vacuum orb, she says that she like saw it and recognized it immediately and thought, well, this was used for this. She thought that it's probably was used for like scientific experiments to see how things work in a frictionless environment, but that it would work just as well as a weapon. And Jodah's like, no, I definitely know that was definitely used as a weapon back in the olden days. This is not some experiment for people that are as idealistic as Maria. This was definitely meant to just do what it just did.
It's like, you're a good person. Maybe you shouldn't help out.
Yeah. And the thing is that Maria, because of her understanding of like the lore, the history and stuff like that, she was able to garner the following that she has. So, Jodah actually got his group. Jaya was able to get their group. Then we go to Karn and Teferi. And the goblins are like, we're with you all the way. 100%. And what's funny is that this is in Shiv, not Otaria. Otaria is where Squee is.
Okay.
So, the fact that these goblins are just like, let's do it. And the main reason is because they knew that they had like all these legends of the last time there had been a Phyrexian invasion. And they knew that it was like how it went down. And they knew that they were going to die either way. And so they just wanted to be the ones to say they did it first. They did it before it was cool. They joined the coalition before anyone else did. Meaning that everyone else joined forces with the goblins to save Dominaria. That's literally their motivation for saying yes.
That's beautiful.
So, the goblins say yes, but the dragons haven't done it yet, and the Viashino won't join unless the dragons do. And so essentially all of this stuff is happening. All these different characters are working together, and they're building up towards where they are. And Joira is really happy to see Karn. She hasn't seen him in all this time.
Joira's his friend.
Exactly. And I mean, we could even say, I'll put it right here. It says, Karn looked up as Joira entered her workshop. She goes, hiding out here isn't the cleverest way to avoid me. He goes, I'm not hiding. And she basically says that you never answered my letters, obviously. And he's like, well, you were trying to talk about Venser, and I did not want to do that. That was the one thing I did not want to do. And she says, but she's like, well, you're here now. So do you? He says, it was self-centered of me to be so consumed by the personal ramifications of Venser's sacrifice. He was also your friend. And she says, yeah. She goes, I was grieving. And you were withdrawing because you were too. There's nothing selfish about it. He goes, it's just different reactions to the same stimulus. Because obviously Karn is that, like, very logical individual. And Joy just says, I missed you!
Buddy!
And then, what's great is that she hugs him. She hugs Karn. Karn is this massive, immovable, basically indestructible machine. And she's hugging him.
I love Joira.
And obviously, he's a giant hunk of metal. And he says that he feels like he says he doubts that she obtained the comfort she sought. Because his body had a similar heat to a human's, but he could not offer her the same softness of flesh. And that he enjoyed being near her and being with her. And that was pretty much all he could say. Mm-hmm. And he says he could divine the inner workings of quartz, but still he would never perfectly understand Joira. And so, basically, she reaches inside of her pocket, and she takes out a bunch of little pieces of machinery, and she says, these will help me install a self-destruct mechanism on the mana rig. So, basically, she knows that eventually Because the
It's like,
mana...
I'm so happy to see you. Now to why we're here.
Yeah, exactly. She's like, it's so great to see you. By the way, I'm going to blow up everything. So what's important here is that the mana rig is basically the only source for power stones. And power stones are incredibly important and incredibly powerful. They're essentially miniature planes in their power, all put into that one little thing.
Okay.
If Shaldred were to get a hold of that, she would have limitless power to work with. Exactly. And so essentially what happens is she's going to put a self-destruct if she needs it. If the Phyrexians come and they are winning, the best move is just to blow up the entire mana rig.
Like a competent Dr. Doofenshmirtz.
Exactly. It's the blow-up-inator. Now, with that said, it says, it's too powerful to allow in Phyrexian's hand. Karn, if it has been too long, we should not have let life come between us. He says, or unlife. And she's, you know, when he was a giant Phyrexian, almost fathered machines, he goes, I forget that you have a sense of humor.
That was funny. Messed up, but funny.
Exactly. And so basically you have everyone working together, and they've done it. They made it through. But because of the fact that everyone encountered a Phyrexian in different ways, also there was a whole deal where there was a fight at the Shiv and the Shiv, where essentially there was a giant Phyrexian dragon, and the Weatherlight was able to fight it. And they just kind of watched it fighting in the air, and that's when the dragons actually showed up and helped, which got the Viashino on board. Which is kind of like a minor side note kind of thing, but it just showed the Weatherlight in action. It's cooler when you read it, but essentially what happened is that as they're getting back there, Jodah calls, is like on the communicator with Karn, and tells him that, like, yeah, we have everyone on board, but there's a problem. When we went to Yavimaya, there was a Phyrexian dreadnought. When they went to Benalia, Urte was there. And here at Shiv, we had the whole deal with that giant dragon. They knew where we were going. They knew we were split up. They knew we were vulnerable.
So they still have somebody among them.
There's a sleeper agent among them. Among us.